And we are live here to chat about engagements, wedding, and all of the awful hot people that we've watched this week. I have really been inundated by the really toxic side of relationship reality universes, as it were. You can think of your typical Love is Blind, your Bachelor, your Married at First Sight. So I'm going to cross my heart and hope to die. I will not talk about toxic reality TV shows today for the next hour. I'm going to bring you other things. With the exception of Temptation Island, that's the only thing you have to like free your mind up for. However, here's the little loophole. Here's why I get to do that. Temptation Island is like the only like crappy reality show I watch that doesn't hinge on like relationship or not relationships, on engagements and weddings. So like that's the part that I'm swearing off, contrary to my intro. So you only have to like free up space for like maybe 2 minutes in the next hour of toxicity, and the rest of it will be like a really good TV show, guys. I promise. Carey and Kate, how are you guys? Do you believe me? Do you believe my promise?
Not even close.
As a friend, I trust you with my life. As a fellow co-host, not an inch.
Well, I will try. I will try my best. Do you bring me any news? It's been 3 weeks instead of 2 weeks, I want to say, since we last chatted, and spring is a very news-heavy season. What do we got?
I only have a little bit of news, which is as the season kind of enters into spring, where all the period dramas tend to air, we're having a re-release. The 20th anniversary of Pride and Prejudice is going to be in theaters. And, you know, if you're watching, you didn't hear this conversation, but we've previously been talking about birthdays. And so I will be forcing all of my friends to go with me to this 20th anniversary viewing. You're my friend, you must come with me.
I am so excited. If I am invited, I'm there. If I'm not invited, I'm there in spirit. I promise.
I appreciate it.
Pride and Prejudice re-release. You get to see the hand flex.
The hand flex.
Yes.
The only thing that would have made it sweeter if it was, instead of it being my 25th, it'd be the 27th, because of the other famous bit in that movie of I'm 27 years old.
I have no money and no prospects.
I have no prospects.
I love
when I'm put into my pattern.
Have you seen when people like put that on their 27th birthday cake?
Yeah, that's been like a long running joke of if I was single at 27, I needed that cake.
We can like rework it to capture whatever relationship status you happen to have at 27. You know, it's nothing a little Austinian rewrite can't cover. Carey, What about you? Any news this week?
I didn't have any news, but some news just sort of popped into my head. Amazing how that happens. There is a bit of casting news in the new Green Lantern series that will be around sometime in the next year or so. Ari Nicole Parker, I think I'm pronouncing her name correctly, was cast as the mother of Jon Stewart in the show, which parenthetically makes me feel sort of old because it's like the characters or the actors or actors that you know that you had crushes on and that sort of thing, and now they're getting cast as people's moms and grandmothers and that sort of thing. Yeah, the gray hairs.
Yes.
But yeah, I'm excited about that.
Oh, that is exciting. Love a good set of spring news coming through.
Yeah, and if you don't know who that is, she is, I think she's married to was it Boris Kojo? And so yeah, they're like the pretty couple of people like on the face of the earth. So that's probably how you would know her.
I do tend to know people by them being inexplicably hot, and I think I know who you're talking about. Like I've got a face to the name. I'll look it up afterwards. The only bit of news that I'm bringing is that apparently Wheel of Time season 3 is dropping. Did I already know this? Like, do I have dementia? Did anybody tell me that Wheel of Time season 3 is dropping? Because I swear to you, like Friday of last week, I got like a little notification from Amazon Prime being like, "Hey, Amazon or the Wheel of Time season 3, whatever, is like out." And I was like, "Was this not one of like the biggest, most watched shows on the planet? How was I just like surprised the morning of the drop?"
I think they did that in season 2 as well, because I remember I watched season 1 and the going into season 1, the trailers were everywhere. All the marketing was everywhere. And then season 2, there was less. And season 3, I agree, I didn't hear anything about it. And then all of a sudden, I heard 2 or 3 people say, "Oh, the new season is out." And I haven't seen season 2, so I probably won't watch season 3. But it was weird that
Yeah.
they didn't just. I guess maybe they're banking on the fact that they had such a large viewership in the first season, but you gotta let like the casual viewers know.
Yeah. It was like really strange. And then I was like, I want to watch it, but like I feel like I need to like reorient myself to the past season because I forgot literally every single thing that ever happened. So I can't like immediately watch it the day it dropped because I didn't prep. Like I need like 15 minutes to watch like a recap video and then like emotionally prepare. But I will start watching it later this week. Very excited. I think there's now 3 episodes, about to be 4 out because I think the first drop was 3 episodes. So, speaking of being on the fourth episode of Suits LA is finally out. Now, the last time we chatted, I think only the first episode, maybe 2, were out. I can't remember, but it was, very, very early on. Maybe I think it was just the first one last time
Just
we
the first.
chatted.
Yeah.
Just the first. So, reacting to a pilot's really difficult. And, there's always things that shift by necessity after a pilot because a pilot is not filmed at the same time that the rest of the season is. So we thought it was a good idea to kind of let them stack up a bit. Now we've got 3 more. We're a quarter of the way through the season, halfway through the season. I don't remember how many episodes are supposed to be, but we're substantively into it. So we get to talk about Suits LA properly, not just the pilot, not just knee jerk reactions. So, my first question for you, and I think we might be at different levels of caught up, but we've all watched like a meaningful chunk of it, is what connections on screen are working for you so far? We've not just been introduced to the characters, we're also getting a couple different dynamics of who's getting along with who's working with who on this, who doesn't want to work with who on that kind of thing. So what connections across this ensemble cast are working?
For me, the easy connection that's working is Ted, and I think Kevin, his quote
Mm-hmm.
unquote investigator friend that he brought from the East Coast with him. That
Mm-hmm.
connection just sort of clicks. I mean, you can sort of say that they're sort of like dude bros, but I'm not calling them dude bros, but they have that chemistry and they have that connection. Kind of like, and I know people are just gonna say, well, sure, that's the obvious connection, but it kind of feels like Arrow with Stephen Amell and David Ramsey.
Yeah.
They just have that kind of connection. So I really dig that one. One that was sort of a surprise to me is Leah and her boss. I'm
Mm-hmm.
terrible at names,
Is it
but
Erica?
Leah, that sounds right. Yeah, yeah, because the
Leah and
tarot
Erica.
cut, you got tarot cut. Yeah. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, Erica and Leah is like a relationship, a combination of people that I did not expect that I was going to appreciate, but I like the humor that they're able to bring out of that relationship. Um, so those are the two that jump out at me certainly, and obviously the one that drives essentially the sort of the show is the relationship between Ted and his former best friend who basically gave him the shaft, stuck a knife in his back, and all that sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the 3 relationships that and sort of connections that I sort of gravitate to and I sort of want to see on the screen. But I will tell you this. After seeing all the episodes, it's really actually show, and I have no connection to sort of Suits at all. This
Mm-hmm.
is my first introduction to it.
Right.
I kind of dig following these people around. They're a bunch of people that you're not necessarily supposed to like, but there are some things about them that you find yourself liking, despite that. So it's just fun to me.
Is it, are you liking the like micro dialogue? Are you finding them funny? Are you liking the fact that this is like a world of like moderately bad people, kind of like self absorbed entertainment and entertainment adjacent folks? Is it the cutthroat nature? Like, what is it that's kind of grabbing you about the cast or the
It
ensemble
well,
characters?
Yeah, well, obviously we're talking about like a business, an industry, an entity that sort of thrives on sort of liars and cheaters and that sort of thing. So trying to find out the parts of these relationships that are sort of true and can sort of survive the cutthroat nature. Because in to a great degree, it's hard to tell who's telling the truth and who's lying. Not even so much about like an event or an incident that's going on, but emotionally, like, are you telling me the truth that you sort of appreciate this person or like this person? So that sort of keeps the viewer on his toes in terms of who should I be like gravitating toward, who should I sort of feel like an allegiance to, and who am I waiting to sort of like not necessarily backstab like the character on screen, but just sort of backstab me because I've invested emotionally in your story, and they do something that I don't appreciate. So it's, but to your point, it's sort of like one of those things where you have so many people who are a bunch of liars and cheaters and that sort of thing. What sort of truth about their personalities can you grab onto, and how do they sort of convey that and deal with that in terms of the kinds of lives and kind of work that they have to do?
Yeah. I like that you're kind of hitting on this idea of like what is the truth, and both the truth and the lies are kind of interesting. They're different perceptions of what's going on, and they're different levels of morality, and that's obviously going to resonate different with different people. For me, one of the characters that kind of I wasn't quite sure about, honestly, in the pilot, Erica, I felt like it was very overplayed, and maybe it was a direction she was directed to be overplayed, but it kind of felt like a caricature. Moving forward, episodes 2 through 4, I really like Erica. I really like the fact that each of her connections with each of the different characters feels very different. Obviously, you have her subordinate, Leah, who's sort of trying to get her up to speed on like some of the entertainment background that she doesn't know. So you get to see her be a hard ass, but also have like a bit of vulnerability there. You see her having to collaborate with women in her environment and men with her environment, and there's marked differences there that I find very interesting. And also, she has a bit of a gray morality, and her morality changes depending on who she's collaborating with as well. So that's a character that's really standing out to me, that individually I'm kind of liking, but as a whole it's giving me some hope that, okay, even the connections that seem maybe a little bit tropey right now, maybe a little bit one note, have the ability to have dimension or differences as they start to connect with other people. Stormy in the chat says, at least we know Ted's brother is dead and he sees him. I'm not connecting to the characters, but seeing Harvey again was like, oh, this is Suits. I missed him. And she agrees with me that the blonde lawyer, who I think is her name is Amanda, will be at least bi. I think we saw in the previews that that has to be the case. And also, like, I'm sorry, that's just the energy she carries. It's canon. And if they don't write her that way, they're homophobic. That's all. So we'll see what direction they decide to
That's
take it. No pressure.
that that's funny because I can't believe I'm saying this out loud, right? But two of the characters on the show are characters on either like The Walking Dead or Fear the Walking Dead, and I
Mhm.
had watched like 4 episodes and did not recognize either one of them. I'm like, and so I go to like IMDb and look. I'm like, you son of a freaking. I could. It's like I don't want to say that they look markedly different, but they're
Mhm.
obviously not in a zombie apocalypse, so they do look a little bit
Mhm.
different.
Mhm.
And that would be like Amanda's character, Maggie Grace, I believe is her name.
Uh huh.
And the reason I brought that up is because the character that she played on Fear the Walking Dead, um, obviously in a zombie apocalypse, you're not thinking about relationships so much, but
Mhm.
you could easily see that character also sort of playing sort of that sort of gray area in terms of romantic relationships. So it's
Mhm.
interesting to see that here too.
Yeah. I mean, I just think it's just like the vibe. It's the way they've written her. They kind of show her flirting a little bit with Ted now and then. That feels very uncomfortable and unnatural to me, but that might be me anchoring to my idea and refusing to like change my perspective, which is very my way of watching things. But we'll see the direction that they take it. Stormy's also mentioned the appearance of Harvey. What did you, if you have got to the most recent episode, obviously he makes an appearance. What did you think of that if you got a chance to see it already? I don't know.
See, again, without having any sort of connection to the original
Oh
show.
yeah, it's not going to be like a big
So,
cameo for you.
no, so no, so and that was my whole thing. I'm pretty sure that there are people who like when he came on screen, like if this was the movie theater, there would have been like that moment for like applause, right? Or whatever the case may be. But all I'm seeing is this flashback and they're talking about like the shortstop is coming to talk to him. And I'm thinking to myself, why in the hell is the shortstop coming to talk to the pitcher? And so obviously the context of the conversation that they had is when I sort of realized the impact of who this was, but probably still obviously not as much as someone who watched the original had.
Hmm.
But you could tell that this was some, even without knowing anything about the original, you could tell that this was someone who was important,
Hmm.
someone who was important to Ted, obviously.
Hmm.
But yeah, the moment when he came on screen, in retrospect, I'm pretty sure that there was an emotional moment or some sort of cool freaking moment for people. But to me, it was just sort of like, why is this dude talking to Ted that I have no idea who it is? So I don't want to say it fell flat, but obviously not having that background, it was funny for me.
It's funny because that's somewhat the reaction I had watching Arrow and comic book movies when like there'd be a big comic book cameo that like to me I don't have like the oh I read about blah 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 for years and years and it's so cool to see them on screen. It's like okay it's a new superhero cool I guess but like you don't have the history. That's sort of the same thing. For me it was just it was funny to see them do their little like Batman and Robin convo. I'm sure that was like so trite and annoying to people who didn't watch both Suits and Arrow and like didn't get it. You know what I mean? Like, I'm sure people were rolling their eyes and finding that cheesy. And like, you're valid in another universe. I agree with you because I didn't put myself watching these two shows at the same time. But unfortunately for me, I was obsessed with both shows at the same time. So this was specifically targeted to me. The only way to make it more targeted to me is if it had been the women from the two shows interacting with each other. I will settle for second best. It was kind of funny because in the original Suits, Harvey and his protege, what Harvey and Mike, they often referred to themselves as Batman and Robin. That was like their whole thing is that they were like Batman and Robin. That came up like every season. It was sort of their little shtick. So then like interacting with a different character who's sort of like bargain brand Batman, and now he's in this. It was very like tongue in cheek crossovery. Kate, I see you smiling even though you have protected yourself from this universe. Share your thoughts.
You're just describing the crossover, and I can reflect on the time period that you're talking about. And while I did not
Mhm.
partake in the suit stuff, I did see it from like an outsider's perspective. There was a lot of crossover in the Arrow to Suits fandom, so I saw plenty of the Suits stuff,
Hmm.
and so it's just making me kind of smile and laugh because that I can even outside I can see that connection. I think it's really funny.
Absolutely. I
Yeah,
um,
I'm
I
sorry.
really hope they bring in a few other cameos, and I think there's been hints that they will bring in um, the Lewis Litt character, who was sort of the foil, not the antagonist, but the foil from the
Mm.
original series, and I think that'll be really fun.
Here's a question I do have. Because we saw with his appearance, sort of obviously narratively, what that meant for Ted in the past, right?
Hmm.
And obviously, I think the expectation is that we're going to see Harvey, quote unquote, in present day. And
Hmm.
I'm interested in what your thoughts are as it relates to like what would be the narrative, what would be the story in terms of his appearance, like in present day. Where does that go?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, when we leave Suits, original Suits, and we leave original Harvey, if we want to like kind of do a bit of a character analysis, we see him pretty close to like finally self actualization. He has a lot of identity issues throughout all of the previous seasons of Suits. He wants to be a hard ass and he kind of like does his whole black and white thing of like, you're either a hard ass or you're like weak and nothing, and it's like there's no nuance there. And then when he develops vulnerabilities, he develops a bit of self hatred. There's like a season where he's going through panic attacks. We see him meeting with a therapist. There's a little bit more of like a kind of mental health, thread there. He kind of sabotages his mental health journey. He sleeps with his therapist. It's a very like two steps forward, one step back, like all of that. But by the end of the series, we see him come to some level of like actualized identity where he can move forward and bring the parts of himself that he likes. Really help. I really hate going on a deep dive on like male characters like this, but unfortunately, I do know the answer, so I'm going to continue. He gets to bring forward the parts of his character that he likes, this sort of like he's a hard ass and he's a winner and he's willing to like kind of work in the gray, along with some of his vulnerabilities, like the parent wounds, the mother wounds that he has, the things that he talked about with his therapist, the things that he, at times becomes medicated for, isolates himself for, other characters who serve as mentors or proxy therapists for him. It's all this character study of seeing somebody go through, mid to late adulthood and identify what they actually want to be at that stage. As such, if we see him present day, if we don't have the time to really dive into anything and give him a storyline, I really don't want to see like a two steps backward. We don't have to have a million steps forward. We know kind of where he lands. We know his career path. We know his relationship path, all of that. I would just like that to be kind of an idea for Ted of what could be, because I suspect we're going to see some of these storylines regurgitated. And I don't mean that in a bad way. Storylines get regurgitated, that's fine. But I suspect we're going to see some similar things of like, well, I'm either, a winner or I'm worth nothing, or, just kind of that black and white thinking. I suspect we'll see some of that from Ted. I suspect we'll see him struggle with like my hard side and my soft side and like all that kind of stuff. And then eventually end up at either an entirely broken place if they want to go somewhere different with it, or something of a self actualized place. But I hope he is a representation of like a self actualized hard ass who can still operate in the gray. That was more of an answer than you wanted to know, and I kind of don't even like it. Like I'm right, but I kind of don't like my answer.
No, and the only reason I bring it up is because when you bring in obviously a legacy character like that, it's like, is it just
Mhm.
for the cameo, for the shock and all, or is it like, is this like a legitimate part of the narrative, right? And obviously with the expectation he's going to be quote unquote showing up in present day. I mean, that sort of matters in terms of it's like, well, why are you here?
Mhm.
And that makes a lot of sense in terms of where Ted is in his life, and he would sort of need that kind of guidance, right? And so it makes a
Mhm.
little bit makes because he who else is he going to get that from right now?
Yeah. Yeah. It'll be interesting to see what part, like, to what degree the original players have either just little nuanced cameos or actually a full fledged part in this season. Which kind of leads me to my next question, but first I'll briefly mention Stormy in the chat said when they started talking superheroes, I'm like, okay, if someone mentions Green Arrow, she also says seeing Harvey again makes me miss Suits. I want to know what Donna, Mike, Rachel, and Jessica are doing, and Lewis is going to guest star this season. Yes, I am very excited to get any brief check in on the past characters. One might say that is one of the main reasons I'm still watching this show. So, our previous complaint, I guess, was that there was no clear season plot. So, my question now that you've seen a bit more of it is, do you still feel the same? And where do you want this to go, either plot wise or tonally? We already kind of touched on tonally. This is trying to capture those like epic highs and lows of working with the LA entertainment elite, which I think is very navel gazy and self centered, but it also is a little bit entertaining. So, what do you think plot wise or tone or any of that? Do you like where it is and do you know where you want it to go?
I like where it is a whole lot more now than I did obviously after just watching the pilot. I will tell you this, I am considerably more interested and intrigued by quote unquote the past, because I need to sort of see how that sort of all fell apart for him. I mean, we obviously are sort of on that path, but I need to see how it fell apart for Ted there, which has obviously necessitated his move out to LA. And I'm sort of also bracing myself to see how Eddie how Eddie wound up how he did, because that's
Mhm.
feels like it's going to be absolutely heartbreaking. Because when you look into the past and you see all the things that Ted had a best friend, had a really nice woman, had a great brother, had like a great family, had a lot of really, really good things set up for him, and basically they were all torn asunder. Um, uh, Probably to a great degree because of his sort of own reckless behavior to some degree in terms of his reckless professional behavior. But I'm really interested in seeing how that all sort of cratered for him. So I'm really interested in that past storyline. In terms of the present sort of storyline, it to a great degree, it sort of I don't want to say it feels like it's not necessarily a case of the week, but in all fairness, some of the subplots are sort of like cases of the week in terms of which entertainer do we have to sort of pacify this week. And I understand that's sort of what they do, and so that's kind of fun. It sort of lightens the mood to a great degree, and sometimes it brings on like guest cast folks that are fun and interesting, right? So there's a little bit more of that in the present day. Um, but I'm trying to think of like, it, and I forget what Ted's best friend, the one that stabbed him in the back. What is his name again? I'm terrible with names.
Oh goodness. Was it Kevin? No.
It's anyway, that guy. We'll just call him backstabber friend number one, right? Um,
Stu not
I
looking at this now.
I still like backstabber friend number one.
Yeah,
Um,
we'll stick with that.
I it you can obviously see during the one of the more
Oh, it
recent
is.
funeral scenes.
Stormy says it is Stewart. Okay. Second time's the
Okay,
charm.
yeah, you can sort of see obviously they're bitter and mortal enemies at the moment, but you can sort of see some softness in some of the walls that are coming down between them.
Hmm.
Um, and so I think seeing them in the past and seeing where they are in the current day sort of absolutely informs what that relationship was and what it's turned out to be. Um, but and I know I'm not necessarily answering your question, but I will only say that I'm considerably more interested in the past storyline than sort of what can happen in like present day, other than it's just always fun to see the interactions between the attorneys and the interplay. I think there's a lot of good chemistry. I think there's a lot of good pairings that we get to see. And so for lack of a better way of saying it, sometimes it's just fun watching people do terrible and nefarious things to each other when they're really good at doing it.
Yeah. And that's kind of the appeal of Suits. Yeah, that's kind of my answer too. Like, other than obviously wanting cameos of the past characters I actually attach to, I want to continue to develop some attachment to at least some of these characters. Doesn't have to be all, mostly the women, but I want to be able to have that attachment where it's like it doesn't matter if she did anything bad. I'm still like gonna defend her at all costs. I'm not quite there yet, but I'm ready to get there. I'm ready to kind of see them do a mix of good, a mix of bad, and have a little bit of conflict of like, well, I think this was fine, and somebody else thinks this was not fine, and like, let's generate a little discourse that gets us to attach to these characters and the and this story. That's kind of where I want it to go. Well, let's dive in to what else we watched or read this week. And Kate, you've been very, silent, just absorbing the suit stuff along the way. So I'm going to pass the talking stick to you and
Hmm.
tell us what else you watched or read this week.
I haven't done a lot of watching, and my reading, I guess you can kind of say, I've been doing a lot of driving, so it's been a lot of listening to audiobooks. So I'm
Mhm.
currently in the middle of Emily Wilde's compendium of, it's a third in the series. It's a good series. It's kind of a very tongue-in-cheek academics journal about her exploration into the worlds of fairies, and she falls in love with one of her coworkers, ends up being the prince of fairies. So fun, so fun. The other stuff I've been listening to is a bunch of Pride and Prejudice fan fiction because I have to prepare myself. Um, just a bunch of that. And a bunch of music. A lot of new music has come out in the past 2 weeks that I've been really excited for. Haim, Jade Bird, all my faves. So that's what I've been listening, watching, reading this week. That's been my stuff.
Yay, that's exciting. That sounds like a perfect spring lineup. Carrie, what about you?
Hello. Now that I've heard this said out loud, it's pronounced Haim.
Yes.
Okay, good deal. I'm glad you said that first because I would have probably said it and I was not going to say it or pronounce it exactly like that. Um, thanks to someone on the show, I have become an appreciator of the talented musical group. I think I'm pretty sure I may have in passing somehow maybe heard a song that they've done before, but this is like the first time that I've said, you know what? This is who this is. Let me take a listen to it. And without having any sort of preconceived notions, and it's the single relationships. It was not what I was expecting, and it's sort of like in a really, really good way. It's like a really
Mhm.
nice spring summer song. I think the kids would call it a banger, is probably what they would call it. It's pretty cool. I dig it.
Mhm. Yeah,
Um,
everybody is saying it's the start of Heim summer, and fingers crossed that that is just the precursor for more music to come.
awesome. And speaking of music, that leads me into what else I've been watching, and I have been trying to stay as current as I can on The Irrational. It's
Mhm.
probably one of the few shows where I sort of I may not have seen every episode, but I am current, so I've seen the most recent episode. It sort
Mhm.
of gives me an opportunity to sort of investigate myself to see what do I remember about each of these characters the last time I've seen them, and how are they doing now? How have they changed? What are they doing, and what are they up to? And so I bring that all up to say that when you have Jesse L. Martin as the star of a show, I know you are shocked, surprised, and amazed that they do an episode that allows him to do one of the things that he does best, and that is to sing.
Mhm.
And I know what you're thinking. It's like, hey, this is a show about where they sort of do these behavioral analysis and experiments and investigate like significant crimes and that sort of thing. How in the world could they possibly incorporate music into this show when it's not a musical episode? Um, well, you basically take a situation where a guy needed two characters to sort of follow his husband around, and lo and behold, they follow him to a theater group where people are auditioning, they're about to put on a show. And oh no, one of the leads of the show has been killed. So not only do you get Jesse L. Martin the opportunity to sing in a production of Little Shop of Horrors, but you also get a little bit of a flavor of Only Murders in the Building, because this is one of those deals where, hey, there's been a murder that's taken place and all of the suspects are here and they can't leave. And so we have to keep them here and we have to do an investigation. I'm telling you, this feels like an episode that you guys, even without knowing anything about the show up until this point, this feels like an episode that you guys would both enjoy because it has elements of things that we probably all do enjoy. Um, so that's been fun, and I've had more fun
I'm
in this
so sold,
in
by
the
the way.
season two.
That sounds fun.
I'm a little bit behind on The Irrational, but I'm sold. I'm going to watch the most recent episode for that exactly. Please continue, but sold.
No, I was just going to say I've had more fun watching season two than I anticipated because season one had this sort of overarching narrative in terms of this particular mystery.
Mhm.
Season two doesn't have that as much, but I think it's made up for it in the fact that you've had season one to build these relationships and this chemistry amongst the players, and they sort of get to flex a little bit more and do a little bit more. So I've had fun watching this season, and like I said, the most recent episode is pretty freaking fun and good.
Sold. So excited to dive into that. So, as you can tell by my intro, the thumbnail, and everything about me as a person, I have been watching Temptation Island, which is much lower quality than anything that Kate and Carey just mentioned. But like I promised, I won't talk about all of the other crap I've been watching too, unless it's like good quality. So obviously, just kind of running through like some of the good things, like Abbott Elementary, Traders, all of that, like all of those fantastic, keeping television alive right now. The Traders finale just occurred. If you haven't watched it, watch it. Fantastic. Gabby, who I picked as my woman of the week previously, like multiple times, really showed up well on the show. So all of that's fantastic. So it was time for me to plummet into the depths of truly the worst television to ever be created, and that's Temptation Island. Now, I don't have much self respect, but I have a little bit. And therefore, I haven't watched Temptation Island previously when I believe it was like created by Peacock for the Peacock app. I don't really know what the situation was there, but I was like, okay, like at some point I have to draw the line and I guess it's here, question mark. But I guess it was good, or the latest season was good or something, but it was acquired by Netflix. Don't know the details. So everyone was talking about it. So I was like, okay, I'll like watch it or whatever. You all. Okay, so this ties in really well to Suits LA, actually. Because one of the things that Carey, you had mentioned with Suits LA is like at a certain point when you're watching a type of show where everybody is kind of bad, there's a little bit something freeing about that, where you don't have somebody you have to root for of like, oh, I really hope this one sweet person doesn't get like their heart broken or doesn't lose this heart. Every single person, all of them. So Temptation Island is like these four couples go on to this island. It's all very like heteronormative. So it's like the guys, the four guys in the couple all go off to like one side of the island and the four girls are on another side of the island. And there's like 12 singles who are like super hot and are going to try to like sway them away from their partner. Which honestly, like Kate and I have talked about the fact that like cheating as a trope is like not our vibe. And that was why I didn't watch it in the first place. Cause I was like, please, like it's one thing to have like Too Hot to Handle where it's like, oh, it's a bunch of hot people on an island. Here's this like mindless, like no plot sort of background filler thing. This has the plot of cheating. So I was like, I wasn't really into it. However, here's the thing. None of these couples are real. They are all just people who vaguely know each other, are vaguely hot. They're trying to sell themselves. It's like, we've been together for 3 years. And then when you actually hear them talk and the nuances of it, it's like, they kind of been like, they hooked up off and on for like 2 years. They dated for like 3 months. They broke up like off and on. And then like some nebulous point 6 to 8 months ago, when it was like time to apply for the show, they're suddenly a couple again. But it's like, that's not real. These are all just like hot attention seeking people who are actually just trying to convince us that they're together and not on this show to create drama. So there's nuance to it. There's layers. None of them are real. None of them like each other. In fact, probably due to the fact that they had to spend the last like 6 to 8 months kind of pretending to be like a serious couple when they like hate each other. They all go into this like wanting to tear each other down, in the process tear their own reputation down. And frankly, the only people who have like the teeniest shred of like self-respect and like character and morals are the temptresses and tempter guys who are like supposed to like sway them away from their other people. There's like multiple instances where like the temptresses will be like, oh my god, he's so weird, like I don't like they're trying too hard to like kind of like build their little harem. Or like the guys will be like, yeah, she's like kind of going through it, but like I'll be a friend, I get you, like that. Like it's so funny. It's so funny and it's so layered, and it is not just couples going on to like cheat on each other. Every single couple also has already like allegedly, not, this isn't a stipulation for the show, they're just terrible people. They've all already like cheated on each other in some way too. So like there's nothing to save here. There's no, the relationships aren't real, and they are also bad to the degree they are real. It's so funny. It's so good. To be clear, I'm not recommending it. And you wouldn't have watched it anyways if I had, but I'm not recommending it. But it's just like, it's not what I originally thought. There's a campy melodrama to it where everybody's just sort of like being awful for fun, and there is no relationship. There's none. They're not real. The end. Yes, I will take questions.
So Is there something to be won through the, because my question is like not necessarily so much is what is the purpose, but is there something that is to be won, something that is being sought through completion of this show?
That's a great question. To an extent, my answer is I don't know because like I haven't got to like the finale part, but the final thing is like they all have like their final bonfire with like the original couple that's not real that they came in with, and they choose whether both of them like accept each other or not. So if they've been like terrible and bad and basically tried to like get these like 12 hot singles to like pay attention, or like one of the 12 hot singles pay attention to them and blah blah blah, and then their partner finds out about it because there's like this whole, they get to like see what's going on at the other house, whatever. They may be like, oh yeah, no, I want to get back with my girlfriend, and then the girlfriend's like, no, I don't want to be with him, or the girlfriend will be like, I don't care what he did, I'll take him anyways, and the boyfriend's like, no, I don't want her to. Like there's sort of like a choose each other at the end. I can't stress enough how much that doesn't matter because these people are not, they were not truly ever together, not in any proper way. They are obviously situationships masquerading themselves as relationships, and they will not be together after the show aside from like being situationships slash PR situationships. So I don't believe anything they're going to say at the final bonfire. Like that's the part I least care about. They're just trying to like create story. And also, I should stress this, and I don't think I stress this enough. They're also really dumb, like all of them, the girls and the guys, kind of equal opportunity. I'll say the guys are dumb, but like both so dumb. So it's like really dumb people trying to create storylines that they don't believe and aren't true. Their lives don't add up. Like they half the time they're not even telling you the same storyline of like how they got together and how they, like one of them will be like, yeah, no, I really want to marry her, and I really like we're ready for this. We talked about marriage, and then the girl will be like, yeah, we've been together for like 6 to 8 months, but I could see in like 5 years us starting to talk about, like they're just so not on the same page. Like they have not compared like notes and stories enough. Do you know what I mean? Like they this would not pass as a green card marriage. Like it's so funny, and they're so dumb. Like they're bad people, and that should be more important. But they're so dumb.
But at least interesting, it sounds like.
It's so
They're not boring.
it's not boring. It is not that. Everything except that. Thank you for listening. Time for our Women of the Week. Let's just continue in the same order. Kate, would you like to go first on Women of the Week?
Sure, I can. So in the vein of I haven't really watched or read a whole lot, but I've read slash listened to some fan fiction. There was a Pride and Prejudice rewrite called The Golden Daffodil, where basically uh Elizabeth, taking back from the proposal, kind of storms off and then is later brought back to Rosings. And through some overheards and other conversations, they find out that Lady Catherine and Anne run a agency for women, where basically they find out that guys have done, like men have done bad things, especially men in power have done bad things, and then they go and they vindicate these women, and are like, she's like playing up that she's a horrible person to these people to convince everybody. So the whole Lady Catherine persona is an act, and I
Mm.
just think that's really funny. It's a trope that has happened a couple times in some of these rewrites that are really really funny. And it's just one of my new favorite ways of reimagining Lady Catherine, because she's such a fun character to read, to mess with, because she's such a caricature normally, that to figure out why she would act like that is it's a funny exercise. And so this one's a really good one with a kind of a fun message, but it's also just like, it's so far-fetched but so funny at the same time. It's an enjoyable read.
That sounds very fun. Very funny.
Awesome.
Shout out Lady Catherine and the redemption of folks falling under the old Harpy
Mhm.
trope.
Yeah.
Carrie, what about you?
So I have my woman of the week. I have like one A and one B because it feels like they're sort of intertwined to a degree. But one A is Mikey Madison, who had recently won an Academy Award for her portrayal in the movie Honora. I think I'm pronouncing it correctly.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why she's one A, and I'm going to give a one B to Pamela Adlon, because Mikey Madison, essentially her first sort of role, as best I can tell, was in the show Better Things, which
Mm-hmm.
debuted on FX back in 2016. which was sort of like a semi-autobiographical comedy drama from Pamela Adlon, basically essentially about her life. And when she cast that show, because it's basically about a divorced mom with raising three daughters on her own,
Mhm.
and she intimately cast that show, primarily taking the time to sort of um, bring in, and I don't want to say that these were like actors and actresses, particularly her daughters, who didn't have, who weren't like actors and didn't have talent, but
Mhm.
she particularly wanted to make sure that these were sort of the types of actors that could sort of pull off and believably play like daughters. And it's one of the few shows that sort of like portrayed like mothers and daughters can really be, and
Mhm.
they can really be something. I have
Mhm.
three daughters, and so yeah, I know how they can be with their mother, and it's not always pretty to watch. And this show, to its credit, was not always pretty to watch, but it was absolutely brilliant. And it, like I said, it was Mikey Madison's sort of first role. And she was fantastic in it. You sort of like seeing her on screen, and like I said, there were times and there were moments when you could not stand her, and I think that's a sign of good acting, right? Um, but she parlayed that into a movie role in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, if I'm not mistaken. I think that came out in like maybe 2022. And lo and behold, a handful of years later, she won the freaking Academy Award at the age of like 25 or 26. And to a great degree, in my opinion, that had a whole lot to do with Pamela Adlon seeing like talent and a glimmer of fantasticness in her, given her that shot, and she's taken it and run with it. So that's why 1A and 1B for me is Mikey Madison and Pamela Adlon as my women of the week.
Oh, I love
Nice.
that. What a good pairing, and what a good backstory to it. I had seen that Mikey had won for Honora, but I didn't necessarily know the background there. So my woman of the week is Chelsea Gray of the WNBA, but more specifically of Unrivaled. I've mentioned on previous, lives that I'm in my like women's basketball era for the plot, obviously, not just because they're all really hot. And I've been watching Unrivaled, which is like the 3v3, like off season, and the championship just occurred, Roses v. Laces. And I won't spoil anything if anybody hasn't watched that, because it did just occur this week. But Chelsea Gray really, really had to, kind of fight for this. And this is an off-season league. It's kind of okay if people don't go hard in the paint, pun and non-pun intended, because it is an off-season league. You don't want to get injured. You don't want to whatever. And going into the playoffs, she had two of her kind of key top players on her team injured, and she really stepped up. I mean, she was fantastic all season. She's incredible at jump shots, three, everything you can think of. But going into the playoffs, it was her and, I mean, everybody on the team is fantastic, but it was her and her. And she had to face off against some really incredible teams with maybe a few less injuries on their side, maybe a little more momentum on their side. And she really held her own and did incredible. And it was so fun to see. And she's also just so fun to watch. She's not like the most like hand above the level of your eye dramatic player, but you still get to kind of see the passion come through even when she's got a little bit of a poker face going on. She is my woman of the week. I love women's sports so much, and I'm looking forward to women's NCAA season as well. I've made my bracket. I'm excited for Thursday, when the games start for, officially March Madness. But no offense to these college students, WNBA kind of has an edge.
I'm glad that that's your woman of the week because it's Chelsea Gray went to Duke, which is in Durham, which is my hometown.
Yeah.
And when my daughters were growing up, we would always go to Duke women's basketball games, and we had some of the best times there. But Chelsea Gray is an absolute dog on the court.
Mm-hmm.
She has had some some like injuries and that sort of thing that she
Mm-hmm.
has had to fall through, but she is a freaking dog. She's a great player, and I am glad that she is your woman of the week representing the Bull City.
Yes, she is. She's incredible. She is so fun to watch. Such a star. And it's like a star amongst stars. You know, when you get to WNBA, like it's such the best of the best. There's no, there's nobody bad who can make it that far. You get to Unrivaled and it's a subset of WNBA to stand out even at that level amongst like incredible women. Like she was so good. Definitely worth a watch if you miss the championship. We are at 9 p.m. Thank you all for joining. Real quick in the chat, Ma says regarding what you mentioned, Carey, she says, I think she deserves the Academy Award despite people hating on her, saying the Academy picked her because of the Amelia Perez backlash. So you've got some folks agreeing with you, Carey. Well, if you have any other thoughts regarding what we chatted about, Kate and Carey's information is in the description down below. You can come chat with us on, social media, Twitter, whatever, and we'll be back in a couple weeks to chat about, I don't know, but I think it could be White Lotus. I feel my White Lotus era loading. I've given it a while. I've let all the episodes pile up. I do not like waiting for a White Lotus episode. I think it's coming soon. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.
Bye.